For a long moment, neither of them moved. The cave held its breath around them. The faint golden light flickered softly against the stone walls, casting shadows that danced but never dared to touch him. The air itself felt heavier here, thick with something ancient, something that did not belong to the world Zarah understood. She stood frozen where she was, her body still, but her mind racing in a way she had never experienced before, because everything she thought she knew had just been broken. The creature she had fed, the monster that ruled the sky, the presence she had felt inside her mind, stood before her, not as a beast of fire and wings, but as something far more dangerous. A man. He did not step forward. He did not speak. He did not need to. His presence filled the space completely, the same way the dragon had, heavy, ancient, unavoidable. Zarah's breath came slower now, not from calm, but from something deeper, something she could not name. Because standing before him, she felt the same thing she had felt on the platform, not fear, recognition. Flame watched her, not like a predator, not like a king observing something beneath him, but like something searching, trying to understand. And for the first time in his long existence, he did not understand what stood before him. A human, fragile, silent, small, and yet her mind had answered his. That had never happened before, not once, not in centuries, not with kings, not with riders, not with anyone. And yet, it had happened with her. Zarah did not move, did not speak, could not speak, but her silence was no longer empty, because now it was filled with something else, a presence closer than before, stronger, clearer, and then it happened again. Not a whisper, not a sound, a thought. You hear me? Zarah's eyes widened, her breath caught again, but this time she did not look around, because she knew the voice was not outside her. It was him. Flame did not move, but something shifted in his gaze. You hear me? Not a question, a realization, and for the first time, the King of Dragons felt something he had not felt in centuries: uncertainty. Zarah took a slow step back, not from fear, from the weight of understanding, because she realized something in that moment that no one else in the Empire knew. The dragons were not silent. They had never been. No one had ever been able to hear them until now, and she was the one who could. When his voice came again, it did not travel through the air between them. It did not disturb the silence of the cave or echo against the stone. It moved through her, deep, direct, unmistakable. You hear me? It was not spoken as a question, but as a realization that had just settled into place. And for the first time since she had been taken from her village, since her world had been torn apart and reshaped into something cruel and unrecognizable, Zarah reacted without restraint. Her breath broke sharply as her body moved before thought could catch it, her hands rising quickly, almost violently, as if something locked inside her for far too long had finally found a way out. She stepped forward, her movements sudden, filled with urgency, her fingers forming shapes, gestures, fast, deliberate, desperate. She tried to speak, tried to force sound through a voice that had never learned how to exist. But what came out was broken, raw, unformed, a strained, breath-filled sound that carried no words, no structure, nothing that could be understood. The sound caught in her throat again, collapsing into silence as quickly as it had formed. But her hands did not stop. They moved faster now, sharper, each motion carrying weight, carrying meaning. telling a story she had never been able to speak. Her eyes burned as she pointed outward toward a world beyond the cave, beyond the mountain, beyond the empire that had taken everything from her. Her movements became clearer, stronger, angrier. Air destruction, men, dragons, her home, gone, her family, gone, her voice, never there to begin with, and beneath it all, rage. A deep, silent rage that had lived inside her for so long it had become part of her breathing, part of her existence, part of the quiet way she moved through the world. And now, standing before the very creature she believed had helped destroy everything she had ever known, she did not care what he was, dragon, man, king. To her, he was part of the fire. Flame did not step back. He did not react the way a man would when confronted with anger. He did not defend himself. He did not interrupt her. He watched, and as he watched, something shifted inside him, not in his posture, not in his presence, but in his understanding. Because while her voice could not carry meaning, her mind did. Fragments, images, emotion. He felt it, the fire, the fear, the loss, and the silence she had lived in. He understood then, not fully, not completely, but enough. And when he spoke again, his voice moved through her mind with a different weight, no longer testing, no longer uncertain, but steady, grounded, controlled. Be still. The command was not harsh, but it was absolute. It moved through her like a current, not forcing her body, but reaching deeper into the chaos of her thoughts, into the storm she had just unleashed. And slowly, her hands stopped, her breathing steadied, not because she chose it, but because something in his voice quieted her. Flame studied her again, more carefully now, his gaze no longer searching blindly, but observing with purpose. A human, broken in ways he had not expected, silent in a way that was not chosen. And yet, she had answered him. A faint shift passed through his expression, not softness, not pity, but recognition of something rare. A silent one, not spoken with weakness, not spoken with judgment, but with understanding. And for the first time, the King of Dragons did not see her as something beneath him. He saw her. The silence that followed was no longer empty. It no longer carried confusion or fear alone, but something else, something quieter, something more deliberate. The chaos that had filled Zarah moments before had begun to settle, not completely, not peacefully, but enough for her to feel the weight of where she was again. Her hands, which had moved so violently, now rested at her sides, though her fingers still trembled slightly, as if the emotions that had driven them had not yet fully released their hold. Her breathing slowed, but her chest still rose unevenly, each inhale carrying the remnants of anger, grief, and something far more difficult to name. Flame did not move from where he stood, his presence as steady as the stone around them. But something in him had shifted, something subtle, something that would not have been noticed by anyone who did not understand the difference between stillness and control. He was no longer observing her as one might observe a curiosity. He was studying her, carefully, deliberately. For centuries, he had known humans only in one way. Loud, fearful, predictable. They shouted commands, made demands, tried to control what they did not understand. Even those who stood bravely before dragons carried something familiar within them. Fear shaped their movements. Fear shaped their voices. Fear shaped their minds. But this one was different. She had stood before him without trembling. She had entered his space without hesitation. And when she felt his mind, she did not break. She did not collapse. She answered. That alone would have been enough to hold his attention. But it was not what held it now. It was the silence. Flame understood now, not through words, not through explanation, but through the absence of something. She did not speak, not because she chose not to, but because she could not, and for reasons he could not yet explain, that did not lessen her. If anything, it made her more. He stepped forward, not quickly, not suddenly, but with a slow, deliberate movement that carried weight in every inch of distance. He closed between them. The air shifted with him, not violently but noticeably, as if the space itself recognized his presence and adjusted around it. Zarah did not step back. She should have. Every instinct shaped by survival should have forced her to move, to create distance, to protect herself from something she could not fully understand. But she didn't, because something inside her had already made a decision. When he was close enough now, close enough that the difference between them could no longer be measured in distance, but in presence, Flame stopped. His gaze lowered slightly, not in submission, not in weakness, but in focus. And then he reached out. Not to grab, not to control, to understand. Zarah's breath caught again, her body tightening instinctively, her muscles preparing for something she did not yet know how to name. But he did not touch her, not yet. Instead, his voice came again, not into the air, but into her. Be calm. This time it did not strike her like before. It did not interrupt. It did not push. It settled, like warmth spreading slowly through something that had been cold for too long. Her breathing steadied further. Her hands relaxed. The storm inside her mind did not disappear, but it quieted, and for the first time, she was not alone inside it. Flame felt it, not perfectly, not clearly, but enough. The fragments of her thoughts brushed against his own, not in words, but in images, sensations, emotions that did not need translation. Loss, fire, silence, and beneath it all, strength. Something unfamiliar moved through him then. Not curiosity, not power, compassion. A quiet, controlled feeling that did not weaken him, but shifted the way he stood before her. Because for the first time, he did not see a human beneath him. He saw something worth understanding. The silence between them no longer felt like distance. It felt shared. Not in the way two people might stand together in quiet understanding, but in something far stranger, far deeper. Zarah could feel it now, not just as a presence brushing against her thoughts, but as something that lingered there, something that did not fade when she tried to focus on anything else. It remained, steady, aware. At first, she thought it would pass, the same way the earlier sensations had come and gone without explanation. But this did not leave her. It did not weaken or retreat. It waited, as if it expected something from her. Zarah's brow tightened slightly, her breathing slowing as her focus turned inward for the first time, not toward the world around her, but toward the place inside her mind where his voice had formed. She had spent her entire life without words, without sound, without the ability to shape thought into something others could hear. And yet now, something inside her was being asked to do exactly that. Her lips parted instinctively, her throat tightening as if trying once more to force something out, something she had never been able to give. But no sound came, only breath, only the same silence that had always followed her. And for a brief moment, frustration flickered again, sharp, familiar. But this time, it did not take control, because something had changed. The voice she had heard had not needed sound, it had not needed breath, it had not needed anything she had been denied her entire life. It had come from thought, and slowly, carefully. Zarah began to understand. Her eyes lifted again, locking onto Flame, her gaze no longer searching, no longer confused, but focused in a way that had not been there before. She did not move her hands this time, did not try to speak, did not look for sound. Instead, she held onto a single thought. A memory, not a full one, not something complex, something simple. Fire. She focused on it, held it, refused to let it scatter. Her breathing slowed further, her entire body becoming still, as if all of her strength had gathered into one place, into one effort, into one attempt. And then she pushed, not with her voice, not with her body, but with her mind. At first, nothing happened. The silence remained. The cave did not change, Flame did not move, and doubt crept in, slow, familiar. But she did not let go. She pushed again, harder this time, and something shifted. Flame felt it, not clearly, not cleanly, but undeniably. A flicker, a fragment, fire, not his, not the kind he commanded, but something smaller, something human, something broken. His expression shifted, just slightly, almost imperceptibly. But for him, it was significant, because for the first time, the connection was not one-sided. You reach. The thought formed clearly now, not questioning, not testing, recognizing. Zarah felt it the moment he understood, not through words, but through the way the presence inside her mind changed. It reacted, and something inside her answered again. Stronger this time, less afraid. She had spent her entire life without a voice, without a way to be heard, and now, for the first time, someone had heard her, not her hands, not her attempts, her. The connection between them no longer flickered uncertainly in the dark. It held, not strong, not stable, but present in a way that neither of them could ignore. Zarah stood in the quiet of the cave, her breathing steady now, her body no longer driven by the storm that had overtaken her before. Yet inside her, something entirely new had begun to take shape. Something fragile, unfamiliar, and impossibly powerful. She had reached him, not with her hands, not with her voice, but with her mind. Flame felt it as clearly as he had felt the rise of kingdoms and the fall of empires beneath his wings. Small, unrefined, uncontrolled, but real. His gaze did not leave her, his molten gold eyes fixed with a level of focus that would have shattered lesser beings. Yet there was no threat in it, no rising dominance, no need to assert control, because for the first time in centuries, control was not what he sought. Understanding was. He stepped no closer this time, did not reach for her again. Instead, he allowed the space between them to remain, as though he understood instinctively that what existed now could not be forced, could not be commanded the way men commanded beasts. It had to be guided. "Do not push," his voice formed within her mind, no longer testing, no longer uncertain, but measured, deliberate. "Hold it." The instruction did not feel like an order. It felt stabilizing, as though his words carried weight not just in meaning, but in effect. Zarah's brow tightened slightly, her breathing slowing again as she tried to follow what he was telling her, though no part of her had ever learned how to do something like this. There had never been a how for her, no teacher, no voice, no guidance, until now. She reached again, but this time she did not force it. She did not push blindly into the unknown. She held onto the thought. The same way she might hold on to a memory she refused to lose. And when she felt it begin to slip, she steadied it. Flame felt the difference immediately. The chaos that had once rushed toward him now came slower, clearer, still incomplete, still fragile, but shaped. "You learn," he said, not with surprise, but with quiet acknowledgement. Something inside Zarah shifted at that. Not pride, not relief, something deeper. Because for the first time, she was not struggling to be understood. She was succeeding. Her gaze lifted to meet his again, her expression no longer uncertain, but searching, trying to understand not just what she was doing, but what he was, what he meant. Her thoughts moved again, this time slower, more deliberate, not fire, not chaos, a question. Flame felt it as it reached him, not as words, not clearly formed, but shaped enough to carry meaning. "What are you?" The question lingered between them, fragile but undeniable. For a long moment, he did not answer, because the answer was not simple, not something that could be given lightly, not something that could be trusted to anyone. But she was not just anyone. She had heard him, she had reached him, and that alone changed everything. When he spoke again, his voice carried a different weight, not just control, not just presence, a boundary. This, the thought formed slowly, deliberately, must remain hidden. Zarah stilled slightly at that, her mind catching the shift instantly, the tone, the meaning behind it. She did not need full words to understand what he meant. Danger, not for him, for her. Flame stepped closer now, not enough to threaten, not enough to overwhelm, but enough that his presence could no longer be ignored, could no longer be mistaken for distance. "If they know," he continued, his voice quieter now, more controlled than before, "you will not survive it." Her thoughts moved again, slower, steadier, this time not chaotic, not filled with rage, but clear,